their teens to their 90s.
You could take off the glasses, please.
Друзья, слушайте.
This is the Israel Connection. My name is David Schulberg.
We do jazz with Getty.
Thursday to Soul Time.
And if you want to change from the usual...
JM 88 FM and on the internet.
Join UA Australia for our weekly Israel updates from 1:30 on Tuesday afternoons. We'll bring you all the latest news and events from Israel, along with a unique analysis of current affairs, including a Q&A. We also feature guest speakers, ensuring you stay connected. Watch out for our weekly emails and register today. Updates recommence from Tuesday, the 1st of February.
The right stuff.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I have just assumed your genders. Harry and Rabbi Pesach back in the cupboard studio of J-Air for another hour of hijinks and frivolity and highly offensive thought.
Good evening, listeners. Good evening, Harry. Tonight we have to be on a little bit of.
Why can I still hear stuff?
Tonight we have to be on a little bit of good behaviour, because tonight begins the 24 hours of Yom HaShoah.
I don't think it's so much good behaviour. I think it's just appreciating the day and what it's about.
So
I think we're always respectful.
It does make you wonder what we need to change. What do we need to change about us in order to be more?
We got an email and
to be on
apparently
better
went to
behaviour
all
tonight.
the presenters to say, look, we're changing the music program to be more reflective of the gravity of the day.
Yep.
If you could ensure your programming doesn't get out of hand. But we've always just talked about the issues that affect people. And I'm sure if we were broadcasting back in the 1930s, we'd be screaming and yelling from the rafters about things that weren't getting done. You know, if we were fortunate enough to be broadcasting on community radio in Australia, if it even existed back then, giving people our thoughts and opinions on what was going on, whether it be over in Germany or what the Americans weren't doing or what Australia wasn't doing.
I think it's obviously a really relevant point. I mean, you can take two paths with being respectful about Yom HaShoah. You can, do your minute silence, for example, and then just keep it low key for the rest of the program, or you can actually take the opportunity to say, what happened on Yom HaShoah that we don't want to happen again? And maybe it's an opportunity for us to actually talk about those things that appear to us today that are related or similar to pre-war Germany. And there are things like that going on. I mean, we have countries invading other countries. We have minorities who are being taken advantage of terribly all over the world. So is it time now to talk about that?
We have people who are trying to be the arbiters of what is and what isn't acceptable thought. If you'd like to have a chat with Rabbi Pesach or myself on any subject, 90692087 is the number to call. You can also send us messages through our Facebook live stream, which you can find at The Right Stuff, J-Air 88 FM, Wednesday, 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Because that title was not long enough when you initiated it, was it, Rabbi?
That was, I think it's explanatory.
I think maybe we should look at
And
changing
who really
that title.
cares?
Yeah, it's not like anyone's listening to us anyway. Well, one person listened back in November, but let's not visit that this evening.
But let's begin just with other matters. I thought that was such a funny story you told about Zach and his car the other night.
It was not a story. He called me.
That was a brilliant... Can you tell everyone what the story was? It's just so funny.
Okay, so my youngest son, Zach, is currently living sort of half the week in Ballarat and half the week in Melbourne because he's studying up in Ballarat. So obviously he's driving his U-Butte, Bougainmobile Ute around town. And then as an aside to that, I've been doing like a YouTube channel for the last, I don't know, couple of years.
I've watched some of your YouTube
posting
channels.
something up.
They're very good.
I might post something up for not post something up for a couple of months, and then I'll post something up every week, and then whatever. Anyway, one of the series that I did was a full engine swap on Zach's car. So Sunday or Monday, Zach calls me and he says, "Oh, look, Dad, I'm calling just to let you know I've had a very interesting interaction with a officer, whatever his name was, from the Wendouree Highway Patrol." And I'm going, "Oh yeah, what's going on now?" What's going on now? Considering my Commodore's just been hit with an EPA notice.
Oh, really?
Abe's Commodore has blown a diff. The patrol's not running. I've just got no spare cars left if I've got drummers.
So
and
he was
gears.
pulled over?
He was pulled over for a random breath test.
Just random. Okay.
Yeah, pulled over for a random breath test.
It's not random, you know. I mean, they look at the
Not when
car
you're
and say,
driving
let's pull
yeah.
this
I
guy
mean,
over.
If our listeners knew what Zach's car looked and sounded like, they'd actually be surprised that he's not pulled up and pistol whipped more often. So I'm thinking the worst. And I said, okay, so what happened?
Yeah.
And he says to me, oh, the guy, the officer came to the window, says, look, I've stopped you for a random breath test, but I know this car. I know this car.
I still find that hard to believe.
And I know you, and I know your old man has recently put a new engine in this thing.
I find that so
So
hard
gave
to
Zach
believe.
the breath test and sent him on his way. What I find really surprising is if he actually watched all the videos,
Yeah.
he would know, and I really hope he's not listening to to us right now, whoever he is, but he would know that car has airbags in the back and no catalytic converters in at the moment and all sorts of other things going
So
on.
we won't post this to your special YouTube page about
no, we're
your
not
car.
we're not going to be posting this. Although I have been thinking over the last couple of days to maybe do like a special YouTube video about, because there's so many people on YouTube who are doing all these tutorials about how to make money out of YouTube, and you need this many subscribers and this many watch hours.
Do you think it works? Do you know anyone who's actually done it?
There are I know there are YouTubers out there where they've got 6 point whatever million subscribers and they're selling T-shirts left, right, and centre, and goodness knows whatever else. I mean, if you're a successful YouTuber, give me a call on 90692087.
I want to hear the story.
But I think about just doing a quick YouTube video about celebrate the moments. Don't focus on the milestones. Because, I've got a channel with, 600 and something subscribers and hardly anyone's watching anything. But you know what? When your son calls you with that sort of story, you just go, what a small world
I can't believe that
it has
police officer.
become,
Anyway.
thanks to the seemingly pointless efforts I make with YouTube.
It's very funny.
Yes. Well, what's been happening in your world?
I went to... All I can think of is I went to the urologist today and I've got the all clear. Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem, he can pish.
There's got to be more than that going on. It was the end of Pesach.
He goes into that little room and it's like Niagara Falls.
Pesach was great fun.
Yeah.
The end of Pesach, you got to sing a little bit on the last day, I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
I think
it was
it was
amazing.
nice.
There were enough of us there because the chevra, the choir at Caulfield Shul, it's made up of volunteers from all over town.
Mm.
But it's amazing. There were enough of us there to just instantly put together a choir.
Yeah.
And do 3-part harmonies and. You don't realise how big that choir has become.
It kind of ebbs and waxes and wanes, that choir. It's very good.
Well, yeah.
And you did a good job.
Thank you.
So well done.
Thank you.
So Pesach was lovely, and it was nice to also get back to normal.
Yeah.
Get back to regular life. Even though I worked during Pesach. Did you work during Pesach?
Yeah.
I think I need a break.
Yeah. But last week was a killer. Because Monday, was it last week? I can't remember why. I only had 3 days of work.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, because Monday was the public holiday.
That's right. Easter Monday, whatever.
Easter, and there was no point going in because I'd busted. I thought I'd go and get the jump on one of my projects, and on the Sunday, was it Sunday Yom Tov?
Yep.
No, so it was last week I did that, thinking I'd get the jump on Anzac Day. So there was no. Didn't go in Easter Monday, and then Friday was Yontif again. So it was only Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that I worked. And by Shabbos afternoon, I'm looking back at the week and thinking, why did I get nothing done? It's like, oh yeah, that's right.
You spent 4 days in shul.
There were only 3 working days that week.
That's right.
Like April has been an absolute write-off.
And I tell you what, the last 2 years, I'm struggling to remember, or like it's just a blink your eyes and it was gone.
Yeah.
I said to someone
That
today,
went really quick
I
this
was
year.
telling someone today about a conversation he and I had, and I said to him, I just can't remember whether it was pre-COVID, during COVID, or after
Yeah.
COVID. It's all a blur. It seems so
And also,
surreal.
as you get old, as you get older into like your age bracket,
Thank
apparently time speeds up.
You're listening to J-Air, Jewish Australian Internet Radio. J-Air broadcasts to Caulfield and nearby suburbs on 87.8 FM, as well as streaming online at j-air, that's air.com.au.
I was curious, what were you talking about when you said you wanted to talk about closet socialists?
There are people out there who aren't necessarily, card-carrying or flag-waving socialists, but they think the world would be a better place if they had the opportunity to spend other people's money. I'll give you 2 examples.
Yeah.
So
just to be clear, in your mind, socialism is definitely a negative connotation.
Socialism
Has negative connotations.
historically speaking, has been the most murderous ideology in human history. The 20th century.
But that's because it's never worked properly.
No, that's because it's never been done properly.
Right, okay.
Which anyone who says that has clearly not read Das Kapital by Karl Marx.
So what
but
was
anyway,
the two groups of people?
So 2 examples. One, people are going absolutely mental about Elon Musk buying Twitter. And
that's a good one.
I read a post
Yeah.
from someone who would probably consider themselves to be a very intelligent person, and I will paraphrase, of course, but basically words to the effect of, you've got enough money to end world hunger, but you choose to go and buy a tech company. All right?
You saw that.
So
I was going to talk about that.
So 2 things.
How good? So you've
It was
seen that
Bashar.
one. You've seen
No,
that.
didn't.
I was going to talk about that
I told you,
tonight.
I refuse to look at your lists. So there's 2 things.
That was one of my posts.
One, it's Elon Musk's money. He can do with it as he pleases. 2,
If you've got to
in
spare
order-
$500 billion, you can choose to spend money
for
however you
you
want.
to say that, clearly you're either completely unaware or choose to ignore the fact that despots all over the world are receiving money from legitimate countries, governments, other sovereign nations, and they're using it to build their multi-trillion-dollar bloody mansions and buying their own personal helicopters and doing all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
The second interaction that I had was with a gentleman running his own small business, and he says, you know what, I'm comfortable, I'm okay, but Lindsay Fox donating $100 million to the National Gallery, right? As far as he's concerned, Lindsay Fox should have been made. The government needs to find a way to make Lindsay Fox and people like him pay that money in taxes,
As opposed to the gallery.
as opposed to them putting it where they want
choose.
it,
Yeah.
because clearly they can't be responsible with the money. And
I
what
thought-
right is it for them? I mean, Lindsay Fox has worked. I don't know of anyone that, Lindsay Fox has defrauded or whatever to get where he is.
No,
You know,
that's good for- I'm sure not.
I'm sure he's a hard-headed businessman
And hardworking
I'm sure,
and clever.
He's very clever. He's very astute
And worked honestly to get where he is.
But he got to where he is, and if he's got a spare $100 million lying around, would have been nice if I would have got the phone call to say, hey, Harry, could you do something with this? But he decided to give it to the National Gallery. You know, who does this guy think he is to say, I think we should leave it to somebody else, especially some sort of government official
All right.
to spend someone else's money?
All right.
So that's what
I
I
thought-
thought closet socialists. They don't realise
Hang on,
what they're actually
just
doing.
to paraphrase, what were the two groups of people again?
Not two groups of people. They were just two examples of closet socialists.
Okay. What were the two examples to paraphrase?
One with Elon Musk buying Twitter. You know, that you got enough money to end world hunger when
Okay.
you go buy a tech
And
platform.
the second
And
one?
the other one, Lindsay Fox, well, he shouldn't have given the money to the National Gallery. He should have been made to pay that money in
to the
taxes for
government.
the government to decide where
Right.
that money went.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to go down the road with this because it seemed obvious to me that if you think that
If you're a
it-
closet socialist, 90692087.
if you think that you're that the world would be better off with that money going to a place you're choosing, right, through taxes or whatever, but instead he's chosen to purchase the perhaps arguably the biggest free speech platform, we won't call it free speech at the moment, speech platform, communication tool that the world has ever known.
Mm-hmm.
And your goal is to ensure, one of the goals, apart from making a profit, of course, is to ensure that free speech is given an absolute priority. Then surely that is one of the best uses that money can buy. As in, do you not realize, like, if you think that it should be going towards some sort of way of making sure there's no more war in the world, I don't know, however that might be,
Yep.
right? Does anyone realize that the way you stop war coming about is by ensuring that people have free speech? That's the first step of a totalitarian, authoritarian,
I think,
fascist regime, socialist regime,
I think-
is to make sure people don't have a say.
I think Musk raised the point in an interview recently where he said, you know you live in a country that has free speech when somebody that you don't like can say something you don't like and things just go on. Everything just continues.
So it leads into it. Sorry, do you want to say anything else? I've got a question. So it leads into a secondary argument now, which is if free speech is permitted, right, then what about hate speech? Firstly, is there such a thing as hate speech?
Okay, so on the subject of hate speech, a number of years ago, we met up with some friends at a venue that we all enjoyed a fair bit on a regular basis. And this particular time, their daughter was there. We'd never met this girl before. And unfortunately, me being me, saw this girl leave in tears because she'd just finished doing her master's or PhD or had written some world-shattering document about the effects of hate speech and how to legislate for it and blah, 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 blah. And I simply took her to task on what should have been her area of expertise. And
I was going to say, I think I remember this incident, but
Agreed.
there have been so many incidents.
and agreed and agreed with her that people may say hateful things, but hate speech itself is some sort of contrivance made up to suit those who would otherwise censor people like you or me or the guy walking down
But there
the street.
has to be you have to be able to draw a line somewhere. For example, incitement. I
I think
think that's primarily it, isn't it?
Incitement is the line.
But then with all the talk these days of triggering, that is now the new incitement. So where does it end?
Sure, but then are you going to have a list of words approved words and non-approved words. What if someone's triggered if I say butterfly
Or rainbow.
or unicorn?
Yep.
You know, or your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries. You know, I think incitement, when you use your voice to encourage others to undertake any sort of act of violence.
What's an example of incitement? Would it be we should go out and kill these people?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? This particular group of people are, well, it's Yom HaShoah.
This is why.
Right.
This is exactly why I'm raising it.
This is why we need to have these discussions on days like today.
Precisely why I'm raising it.
These people are subhuman. We are going to be doing the world a favour. Let's get rid of them. Let's cleanse the nation. That is incitement. Now, if you simply stood up and went, look, I've met a few Yidden and based on my experience, they're all pricks. Well, that might be hateful, but it's not hate speech. It's a hateful act of an individual. And that individual, like, the only way hate speech can exist is if whoever the architects are of whatever rules, regulations, or legislation come about to stop it have some sort of list in mind. This is why I was very concerned when the Liberals started pushing to legislate for banning the swastika. As hateful a symbol as that is, as soon as you ban that one symbol, what's the difference in banning another symbol? What if there's a particular group out there?
So just to on that point, wouldn't you? I would agree with banning the swastika.
Right.
You are
I
saying
see
that
it as a slippery slope.
So you would like to, but you can see that there are potential problems in a wider kind of sense.
Correct. So who's to say there isn't a group who will now come forward and say, we find the Magen David offensive. And then in the legislation, you can no longer display the Magen David. Now, also understand, this is completely unpoliceable legislation. It's a bit of virtue signalling on the part of the pollies that push this sort of stuff through
but
Parliament.
it's directly relevant to Twitter, because what does Elon Musk now permit on Twitter? Does he permit a swastika or not?
Well, here's the interesting thing. Let's not even talk about the global situation. Let's say because it's only legislation in Victoria. So let's say someone in New South Wales, for whatever reason, posts one up on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And Twitter becomes this free speech, like the absolute, gold standard of free speech, right? But then someone in Victoria opens up that tweet or whatever. I don't use Twitter. I don't know how it works, but sees that swastika, right? Can the person from New South Wales be pursued under Victorian legislation for displaying the swastika?
Oh, I see. So then you'd have to make rules dependent on the country.
And again,
state.
You've got cross-jurisdictional issues. But again, what if a group comes along to say a Magen David is offensive to us? Right? What are the rules for deciding what an offensive symbol is? And if you can define an offensive symbol, then you can define an offensive word.
Most people have no idea that that the swastika is a good luck symbol to a lot of people around the world.
Well, I actually had this discussion with
you and I've had this discussion.
We've had this discussion, but I actually discussed it with the MP who was bringing this matter before the Parliament, because in I can't remember, I think it's if it's sitting like flat, if you were to put it on a table, if it was sitting flat, it becomes a good luck symbol for, I don't know, I can't remember whether it's the Buddhists or the Hindus or whoever it is. If you turn it at 45 degrees, all of a sudden it's a symbol of hate. And please give us a call on 90692087. Let us know your thoughts on all this.
I was sitting in I went on a tour. So I was on a tour of the Copenhagen, the brewery. What's it called? What's the Carlsberg? the Carlsberg
Right.
Brewery in Copenhagen, and walked out the beautiful, magnificent fortifications of the brewery. Looked like a bit of a castle, parts of it. And across the top is a magnificent 500-year-old design with swastikas in the tile work.
Yep.
Looks lovely, but not really very appropriate.
Yeah.
Makes
not,
you think twice.
not anymore. The Finnish, I'm pretty sure it was the Finnish Air Force that during World War II flew under a light blue swastika. And they were with the Allies.
So it's about the taking of these symbols and co-opting them. Not to draw any parallels, but everyone today when they see a rainbow thinks of LGBT, and there's no parallel there whatsoever between
No.
LGBT and Nazism. But the fact is they take symbols and it becomes co-opted and all of a sudden has meaning for a particular group, or meaning in the common...
it takes on a completely different meaning to
Yep.
what it initially had, to the point where the initial meaning has just been lost to the sands of time.
The right stuff.
Again, 906-920-87. If there's anything you would like to talk about with Rabbi Pesach and myself, feel free to give us a call or send us a message in the live stream. I think I've got the comments section up on the screen, so if anything comes through, we can see that. What's
Let's,
next on the docket, Rabbi?
Let's take a couple of minutes to reflect on what happened at the Glenara Council this week. Are you up with what happened?
Are you talking about the vote regarding the adoption of the definition of anti-Semitism?
Anti-Semitism, right.
Yes, I'm aware that they have adopted. It's the International Holocaust Remembrance Association.
I assume it was done
Chamber, whatever.
to make sure that it was coincided with today.
Yeah, and that everyone was on the same page.
Mm.
Although there was a glaring abstention from that vote from Glenara City Council, and I'd be interested to know why that person abstained. What was it about this particular definition
Yep.
that made him
I'm also
so
very interested to
so
know that.
uncomfortable to actually provide a yes or no? So David Zingia, if you are listening, please give us a call on 90692087.
You would like to hear what that was all about
would like
from
to
your
know,
point of view?
You know, as a fellow Red Sea pedestrian, why it would be so difficult and make you feel so uncomfortable that if you weren't for it, why you weren't prepared to have your name recorded as a no against it. I really don't know what this is going to do at the local council level. Again, I think it's one of those
I don't think it'll be
virtue
yeah.
signalling,
It won't be
posturing
anything.
things like Moreland City Council declaring that it's, you know, a nuclear-free municipality. You know, tell that to the Chinese when they nuke us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was aware of how that vote went. And again, is it just because he's a lackey for the Greens Party? Is there something more to it? As I say, David Zingia, feel free, give us a call. You're more than welcome at any time.
Have you ever visited anything to do with the Holocaust? Have you been to Europe or any of those places, or Holocaust Memorial Day or anything like that?
I've been to Yad Vashem.
Oh, you've been to Yad
I've been
Vashem.
to Yad Vashem.
Do you have recollections about that? Must be a while back that you went.
Oh, I haven't been to. Yeah, it was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But I do have some recollections of it. I have not been to Europe, and to be honest, I really have no intention of going to Europe.
All right.
I see myself as the progeny of families who were hunted down to the point of expulsion in Ukraine and in Romania. These countries didn't want us around back then from what I can gather, these countries really couldn't give a crap about us right now. Why would I waste my time just to go, "Oi, I'm still here," and who's left that I can flip the bird to?
Yeah.
Just to go,
My daughter,
we
Ali-
won.
my daughter Elisa, who's in Israel at the moment, she'll be going in a few months to Poland.
Yep.
Which we're all a bit funny about because the next country is Ukraine to Poland. So, for obvious reasons, we don't want her entering into a region where there is trouble. But I'm sure the rest of Europe.
Isn't
and
that interesting?
For what it's worth, most of Ukraine is probably okay at the moment, even though they're
But isn't that an interesting kind of paradigm that parents like us have?
What's that?
Well, we don't want our kids, we're kind of, there's some trouble in Europe, maybe you shouldn't go there, or there's this going on, maybe it's not a good time to go and take that holiday on the Solomon Islands, but, you want to go and spend a year in Israel? Off you go, Zamet Gazint, with our full blessing. Yet you speak to a lot of people and they're quite convinced that Israel's just this war-torn hellhole. War-torn hellhole, because that's all they see.
Yeah. It was like that day that I visited Cairo.
Exactly.
And all of the media around the world were focusing on all the terrible things going on there, and we got there and it was national jubilation.
Yeah.
They were rapt that they got rid of Morsi, of the
yeah.
Muslim Brotherhood. So what I was going to also say about Europe is that I have trouble even trying to find the logical reason in it, which makes it difficult to say. The president or prime minister, whoever he is, of Austria, made the comment that Ukraine should not be in the EU anyway. Mate, Austria shouldn't be in the EU.
Yeah.
What the hell? What kind of attitude is that? Where your neighbour?
The EU shouldn't be in the EU. The EU is just an absolute mess. I think
you can appreciate how there are all these little countries, all
but
these little states, and they have to come together in some sort of
union. The best thing to come
union.
out of the EU is Great Britain.
But what sort of trouble does that cause? And I mean, on a day like Yom HaShoah, to actually make that statement, when was it like Austria was sort of laid down their arms to Germany within reason, and they did a lot of the harm that Germany was involved in.
But I don't understand. I don't appreciate anybody going to I know that a lot of the camps have been maintained or restored. Was that no? Nothing's flashing on there.
No.
And they're there and they're being preserved as historical sites. But I don't think they're there as historical sites for people like you and I to go to.
Sorry, what are you referring to?
Like the going to places like Auschwitz or seeing Treblinka or Birkenau or any of these places that, whether in whole or in part have
They're
been...
not tourist sites.
They're not for us to go as tourists. They need to be maintained to remind the locals of what happened, of what their previous generations had done.
Yeah.
There's no one in Germany or Poland or Romania alive today, as I say, that I could walk up to and give them a smack in the head and go, that's for my grandparents, brothers and sisters and their parents and whatever else. There's no one alive in the Ukraine today that I can, punch them in the stomach, leaving them vomiting in the street, go, there, that one's for my, great-grandfather's brother and his family that didn't manage to get out. But these things need to be maintained to remind the locals.
I think it's important that that our children have some sort of inkling of what their ancestors went through. I mean, half of our population were killed, right?
At least.
And at least half of our population were killed. And if you don't get the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim that we go through on Pesach, right, and how for over 200 years we were suffering, which is really what you're meant to appreciate from, the bitterness and all of that. But if you don't get that, then you'll go on a student trip to Germany or wherever, to Poland, and you'll visit some of these camps, and you'll actually see and feel a very small inkling of what happened there. Then maybe it's done its job, and that we have that little bit more appreciation for our life.
Well, there's a very long discussion that you and I'll probably
Well, what's
have.
the discussion?
What's
Why?
that-
Because a
the
minute ago
discussion-
you said that that's not for us. It is for us. Otherwise, you could make the same argument about the Seder. It's not for us to have. It's for all the bloody Egyptians. They can,
No,
and all
I
the
think-
goyim.
no, I
they
think
can all
it's-
go through
No,
a
it's
Seder.
very different to tell the story and sell it and talk about it in the sense that you were there, which is what the Haggadah has done for us,
Yeah.
right? To make some sort of pilgrimage to the actual place, that would be the same as saying, well, you can't really appreciate the Haggadah until you've actually been to Egypt, until you've actually stood at the pyramids and you've gained some understanding of
Tell
what it
you
was
what,
like.
when I first
to
saw the Nile with
schlep
my
those
when I
rocks
saw the
and
first Nile
all that
with
sort
my
of stuff.
the Nile with my own eyes, that first moment, it kind of brought it all home. Like, you, in your mind, you think it's this like Yarra River, and it's a gigantic
It's
river.
massive.
It's like a couple of kilometres across.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And you can sort of see Moshe in the Teva down by the reeds over there.
Yeah.
And you can see the sand over there and the settlements.
That may be the case, but you don't need to go and see that to appreciate the story in the Haggadah.
Right.
You
Fair
understand
enough, yes.
where I'm coming from?
Whereas-
I don't think
Whereas with that,
it provides a touchstone that cements someone's Jewish identity to the point where they're not going to become that assimilated that, their kids and their grandkids aren't even going to know
yeah.
that, grandma, grandpa, whoever it was Jewish. Right? I don't know. I struggle with the thought. As I say, I really have no intention of ever stepping foot into these countries. I don't think there's anything they can offer me culturally. I think they're still, for the most part, populated by backwards peasants. And in a heartbeat, should the right person come along, they'll be out with their torches and pitchforks all over again. If you feel like disagreeing, 9069-2087 is the number.
Enjoy listening to J-Air? Support us and become a member by visiting our website j-air.com.au.
Just on the topic of visiting Europe and seeing some of these related sites, I went to in 1993. I went to Dachau. There are the ovens there. There's a gas chamber. The barracks are no longer extant, but there's memorials on the site, and it shows you where the mass graves were. The thing that upset me the most at Dachau was to walk through the gas chamber is there's nothing that compares in our world to it normally. But what upset me the most about that was there was a sign in there that said never used as a gas chamber, which to my mind definitely shows that these people today still have
Wasn't
these
it
hangovers.
Poland that recently passed legislation, like we started this evening talking about free speech. Was it at Poland
It's a while back now
that has now made it illegal
to deny
to
the Holocaust.
was it deny or was it to acknowledge?
Oh, not illegal to acknowledge.
I can't remember which way they went.
Oh, there was something about that. If anyone knows, please call in on 9069.
There was something about Poland. I can't remember whether it was
2087.
pre-COVID or during COVID.
Yep.
There was something about Poland and the Holocaust that I remember. It got my blood boiling, and I
Yeah.
just, for whatever reason,
That's right.
I just can't access that part of my brain right
And you
now.
walk through the gas chambers, and it goes straight into the room where the ovens are, and it's perplexing. That people could even build that with that in mind is just perplexing. I'm sure it wasn't built voluntarily by anyone, as in, I'm sure people were prodded to do it. And then Rochelle and I
See, I'll
visited.
disagree with that.
What?
I'll disagree with that.
Oh,
I think people willingly toiled to build those things
There were
because
plenty
they were
of people with
promised all
criminal-
sorts of things.
Plenty of people with criminal minds that did a lot of these terrible things.
Even well-meaning people, but they would have been promised all sorts of things or threatened with all sorts of things. And
Anyway, we
that's
don't
how
know.
they got, and that's how they get built.
And then Rochelle and I went about 22 years ago to Theresienstadt. And there's actually so we're in the ghetto of Theresen.
Yep.
And then there's an extermination camp about a couple of kilometres up the road, which we visited. And it wasn't open, but the building, we could look in through the windows. And it's just like looking in one of those Holocaust books with the table, like a medical table and all that sort of thing. It's you should go, Harry. It's hard. I can hardly walk into any Holocaust museum. I've just seen so much now. I don't think I could walk back into what's it called in Jerusalem where you went?
Yad
Into
Vashem.
Yad Vashem. I'm not sure I could walk.
You see, I
back
think
there. I've just seen everything.
I think
and
Yad
it's terrible.
Vashem is an important place for Jews to go to recognise, and I think it's been put together in such a way that pays real honour to those that were slaughtered, and it invokes the horror that many would have endured and encountered, even survivors would have endured and encountered. I think having a place of our own to recognise that these things happened is much more important than going and visiting the places where the atrocities actually occurred.
Yeah,
I can see a big difference in those two things.
I can see both being of value.
As I say, I don't think me visiting
Because you just think
Poland
about it in
will-
your brain as black and white. I'm on a Facebook page group that posts old black and white photos of Melbourne,
Yeah.
and I like to put them through a colorizer because it just makes it a bit more clear about, in my mind, how relatable that kind of thing is to today. Like a black and white photo has no bearing for me to what it looks like today, but as soon as you colorize it, bam. It's like you could walk outside and there it is, just like that. So you go to these places and you can, like, it's palpable that such atrocities were done in these places.
So I think they've managed to do very similar at so much effort and so much thought was put into the building of that place to be not just a permanent reminder, but a monument to all of those who suffered, whether it be those who were actually slaughtered or those that went through the atrocities to come out the other end as survivors. It's as I say, I still have enduring memories of it, and I'm going back 30 years. And as I say, to fly into somewhere like Poland to go and see a couple of these places, the place has absolutely no interest to me whatsoever.
I published a book by the late Ben Kotek, who was the father of a friend of mine, and he'd translated a journal that was published monthly in New York. Someone had gotten stories out from the Warsaw Ghetto between 41 and 45. It's called The Holocaust as It Happened, and this I'd never heard of these stories before, and the atrocities that are described in there, that are written in there, are just beyond any kind of human reasoning. What they did to children and people and
Yep.
all.
And
It's
this was
terrible.
from one of the most seemingly sophisticated societies on the planet at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, where do you go after that sort of discussion?
It has
It's
been
hard.
a bit heavy this evening, but
Yep.
I think it's been poignant.
Yeah, it's been a good opportunity to talk about it.
But I'm surprised someone will send a complaint into the Board of Management tomorrow morning over something that either of us have said.
Yeah. Have you seen that? Have you seen, just on Ukraine for 2 seconds, have you seen Putin? They're all talking about how he's ill, like he's got Parkinson's or whatever.
Is Putin ill?
You didn't know about that? You haven't followed that?
I haven't seen much over the last few days.
The last few days, there have been a couple of videos posted where he's shaking quite visibly,
Right.
and I don't think he's at death's door by any stretch,
No,
but
if he was incapacitated for any period of time, the world wouldn't be upset by that.
It makes me worry that there are definite war crimes going on, and they're talking about how there are mass graves in Ukraine right now that have been caused by the Russian military, and it upsets me that if Putin is somehow disabled, he won't be able to stand trial for war crimes. Not that he would actually leave Russia ever,
Yeah.
but he won't be able to.
And then what about his generals and
Well, this is the thing.
colonels and
So this is the thing.
lieutenants and like how far down the line
They might
do
just
they
decide
go?
to stop it at Putin. Whereas that what they should be saying, the people who are looking to put this before a war crimes tribunal, guys, we're not just talking about Putin. We're talking about the generals and all of your lieutenants who are ordering all this stuff. You're going to be held accountable, because at the moment everyone's just pointing the finger at Putin. It's rubbish. It's
Well,
not
of
just
course it
him.
is. Of course it is. The question is, from my perspective, is this can only be happening due to one of very few reasons. Either the generals agree with their commander-in-chief,
Yep.
or the generals are scared of their commander-in-chief to stand up to him.
Yep.
You know, unless you can think of some other reason this would be going on. But I mean, this is the first time in 80 years, I think, that a democratic country has been invaded by another sovereign nation.
Right. Has been invaded. That's right.
Because for all this talk we heard, I mean, this has been going on for 2 months now.
Except
for all the
Israel.
talk,
Except for Israel.
what do you mean?
What time frame did you give?
The whole Ukraine thing.
No, you said
Since
like in
Russia
the last
invaded
last
last
however
80
many
years.
80 years, except for Israel.
Except for
maybe.
Israel, maybe.
Hmm.
Except for Israel, definitely. But the point I'm getting at, 2 months. Now, in the very early days, we were hearing, oh, this is a conflict that's been going on for 8 years. You know, why weren't we hearing about it? Because the conflict was it was basically a domestic issue between the Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed militia. They weren't actually Russian soldiers. They were just militias backed by Russia. Russia only invaded two months ago. And it's the first time it's happened in, as I say, in nearly 80 years, with the exception of Israel in 67, 73, so on and so on and so on. 58, I think. You know,
I'm not sure if you and I have talked about this on air, but there are mercenaries working for Russia.
I've heard this.
I can completely understand people who go to Ukraine and help Ukraine defend against Russia, but I've heard that there are mercenaries, meaning they are getting paid by Russia
Yeah.
to come and do nasty stuff.
Therefore, they don't care what the cause is. You know, a mercenary does not ask, why are we doing this? It's just, oh, you want me to do that? This is how much it's going to cost you. If you agree, press, add to cart, punch in your PayPal details, and we'll go off raping and pillaging for as long as you keep the money up.
Yeah.
That's basically how mercenaries work.
This is another topic that went through my mind when I heard about this, which is, how is it possible that we don't have even one of those persons' names and put them on some sort of, whether it's a no-fly list, or we put them on, or we actually make them accountable in the country that they're from? Like the United Nations needs to put forward some sort of...
Yeah, you're really going to turn to the United Nations to do the stand-up, do what's right thing.
All right, so then America or Australia needs to say, if we find out that you have been to Russia and you're fighting for Russia in Ukraine, you are going to
Well, we have
...
Yeah, we have laws about that. That if you go and join a military force of another country,
That's not a military force. This is mercenary.
if you're getting paid by them,
Okay,
then
maybe
I'm
that
sure
part
that
of the
I'm
same...
sure that someone will be able to connect the dots.
Mm.
If you were taking orders from them,
Yep.
your operation was being sponsored by them, that would be in cahoots with that enemy combatant state.
Yeah. Well, I would hope so. I would hope that's the way we decide to go. If
I certainly do.
Yeah.
So
maybe we need to speak to. Maybe we need to. We'll write a letter to David
And if
Southwick
you're-
about it,
and if you're an
or
Austra-
Josh.
And if you're an Australian fighting for the Russians in Ukraine, please give us a call on 9069 2087.
we want your name.
We'd love to get your name and details.
Find us on Facebook. Just head to www.facebook.com/J Air Radio. That's 2 R's. J Air Radio.
We've got machine gun topics.
We've got machine gun topics. I wanted to quickly mention
Maybe it's not
today.
appropriate machine gun topics.
Today or this evening starts Yom HaShoah. We had Anzac Day on Monday. I went to the dawn service at the shrine, and you know what? After 2 years, it was again an amazing experience to be a part of.
Good on you for going.
I think if you've never been to the dawn service at the shrine, you've just give it a go once. Make the effort to get yourself up, get yourself over to the shrine. You just can't. It is such a solemn event.
What are you doing there? You were there at 4:00.
I got there about 4:45,
And
5 o'clock.
what
and
did you do?
You just stand there in the dark
Where were you?
in front of the shrine. So
Near the flame?
yeah, more so standing in front of the stairs, because that's where the ceremony takes part. And imagine as you're standing there, the ceremony itself starts at 6 o'clock. So when you get there, you can see hardly anything. You can see people around, but you can't see all that much. But as the sun comes up, just as the service
There must have been thousands.
is
of
about,
people
they
there.
reckon they had about 50,000 there
That's a lot.
this year. And I suppose I get a different perspective on it to most people. That as the sun comes up and you actually start to be able to see into the distance.
Yep.
Like how many people, like there is just this sea of heads that just stretches for miles and miles, and you can hear a pin drop. Like
Gee.
it is that quiet. The only thing you will hear is a tram going past on St Kilda Road at times.
But what are they doing? When you got there at 4:45, what was going on? Nothing?
Nothing. You stand there and you wait for the ceremony to begin.
Oh, you're waiting for... And the ceremony began at...
6 o'clock.
And you're just standing there.
And you stand there. And it is, and you I'm sure there are ex-servicemen, families of ex-servicemen standing in that crowd, reflecting on their time in service, reflecting on mates that may have never made it back from whatever missions. For someone like me, I find it a time where you just stand there in quiet reflection of how really fortunate we are that for the most part these things never made it to our shores. I think one of the things we don't appreciate about our military history is that for the most part we have always sent our servicemen and women to other parts of the world to ensure that the citizenry over there gets to enjoy the freedoms and the liberties that we have over here. I understand that, like...
Did you have anyone in your family? I had my Rochelle's...
no, because...
Rochelle's grandfather and my great-uncle, they were all...
Yeah, but all my grandparents were immigrants, so I don't have a long enough history.
Oh, I see.
To familial history in the country, but I am, I've effectively won the genetic lottery simply because one lot of grandparents came from Romania, another lot came from Ukraine, and by some divine set of circumstances ended up here. And hi, I'm Harry, and that's basically my story.
We should probably
but
finish
you've got to
up
be
now.
grateful for that.
Yeah, I can see Dwayne's looking to come in with Ital 84.
Ital Music.
Ital Music 84.
Get it right.
So Dwayne's coming in soon, and it's been a very solemn program.
We've tried.
In relation to Anzac Day, lest we forget, and in relation to the Holocaust and Yom HaShoah, to all those who perished on a Kiddush Hashem. For being Jews, may their memory be a blessing.
Amen.
And may their neshamas have a great aliyah.
Indeed.
We're always looking for people with an interest in radio, either presenting your own show or being on the technical side. Become a volunteer now. Head to our website at j-air.com.au. Follow the Get Involved link and click on Become a Volunteer Now.
Ani